We greatly appreciate your valuable time and kind interest in the event today, titled The unFIX Model for Versatile Organization Design. Please mute your mic. The unFIX model. Please mute your mic. Whoever is joining, could you please mute your mic? Thank you. The unFIX model focuses on the interaction between humans and continuous innovation, with the ultimate goal for organizations to be agile and stay relevant in the ever-changing business and societal context. Jurgen Appelo, our valued speaker today, is known as a writer, speaker, trainer, entrepreneur, illustrator, manager, blogger, leader, freethinker. He has been recognized by Inc.com as a top 50 leadership expert and a top 100 leadership speaker. Some housekeeping rules. We'll have about a 45 minutes presentation followed by a 30 minutes Q&A session. You can put your questions in the chat and Jurgen will answer them by the end of his presentation. Close to the end of the presentation, I will also put two links, one to our survey and the other one for the PD claim form. We greatly value your feedback and would love to hear what you think about the event. Last but not least, I would like to extend our gratitude to our monthly event sponsor, SoftServe. The work of PMI Bulgaria chapter and its members are further generously supported by our sponsors, Atos, Galvanize, Field Focus, and Telele. Without further ado, I give the word to Jurgen. Jurgen, the floor is yours. Stop sharing now, my friend, and you can start.
By the way, Anna, please.
Just one moment.
Phone and the other so we can start. All right, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone in Bulgaria. I have been in Sofia just 5 months ago. It was winter back then. That was literally super cool. It was snowing, I remember well. I was running in the park and the snow was nearly up to my knees at some point. But I had fun. I had a good time. And now it's summer over here, 30 degrees. I am in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and I'm wearing my shirt because, my God, it is hot, the other side of the climate spectrum. But without further ado, I would love to share some things on the work that I have been doing on organization design. I hope some of you find that interesting. And it starts with this observation, which is that more and more I see these articles about agile being dead. Now, I'm from the agile community. Sort of well known at agile conferences around the world. I've been part of the community for 15 years. I don't think agile is dead, to be honest, but there is certainly something going on. What has been called agile is not sufficient to achieve business agility. We need a bit more than just self-organizing Scrum teams to call it that. And some say that McKinsey killed agile. I don't believe that. Agile software development is dead. Deal with it and things like that. Well, I have my own thoughts on this matter, and it starts with a bit of inspiration. I was at a company called Hire, which is a Chinese company 10 years ago in Qingdao, which is in the northeastern part of the country on the beach. And this company is famous for refrigerators, air conditioning, all kinds of household appliances. And they have been growing very fast. I think by now they're 80,000 people or something. The CEO of that company wrote the foreword of the Chinese translation of my book, Management 3.0. I'm pretty proud about that. I met him over there. But there is something super interesting about this company, which is that they are a network. They are a network of 4,000 self-organizing units. Imagine that. There is very little hierarchy. It is actually a big network of what they call micro enterprises. And every micro enterprise is about 15 people, more or less. And these all self-organize in this huge network of businesses, of micro enterprises. They're called the largest home appliance brand in the world, and the most valuable Internet of Things ecosystem brand, and the world's most creatively managed company. So there are a few things that we can learn from them. And back then, 10 years ago, when I was there, I did a course on management 3.0 for the company. They were asking me for advice on how to run a network of micro enterprises. And I had no idea. I had no idea what to offer them as suggestions. Now, 10 years later, I have a couple of suggestions. And part is inspired by what they have been doing. And it starts with the distinction of what happens within that unit, that micro enterprise, and what happens outside of it. That's two different sides of the coin, you could say. First, how do we nail it at a small scale? And then how do we scale it to make a larger network? And that first part, how do we nail it? That is where agile traditionally applies. That is at small scale, self-organizing units. Beyond that, we need something a bit different, but I'll get to that in a moment. First, we need to recognize those 4,000 units. They are different from each other. Some do manufacturing, some do marketing, some do HR, etc. But they're not in a hierarchy. They are in a network. And I think it starts with the base. The base is the pattern of a small group where people feel safe and at home. And at Hire, they call that the micro enterprise. I call it the base. Some people call it the tribe or the business. Can please everyone close their microphone? Sylvia, please, as a moderator, you should be able to close microphones of everyone because this is very disturbing. Thank you so much. The base is the group where people feel safe and at home. So it's the micro enterprise at Hire. And that is the first pattern of what I call the unFIX model. It fuels recognition and belonging. I was once part of a large company of 4,000 people. It was a consultancy company here in the Netherlands. And I was just a software engineer. I was rented out to some client with 3 other team members. And I loved my team. We were a team of 4, but I didn't know anyone else at the company. I had no sense of belonging. I had no feeling of a tribe or a base, a small group of people that I belonged to. So I quit. I quit within a year. I couldn't care less about that big company that was paying my salary. I went somewhere else. So I think that was a big mistake for them, to be honest. I went to another company that did that quite well. They organized, they had a small number of people. That was the business unit, and that was the base where people felt recognition and belonging. So that's the first pattern. You need to offer people a sense of safety. Where do they belong? Then within that base or micro enterprise or tribe, you have, of course, a couple of teams, at least one, probably more. I like to use the word crew, which is because a crew comes with the idea of they are on a mission to get somewhere from A to B. They're trying to get something done. And the word team has sort of lost its meaning, in my opinion, a little bit in the last decade or so. I have heard some people talk about their entire company of 100,000 people as a team. And then I think, that's not a team. That's 100,000 people. That's not a team. But so that's my observation. The word team has lost its meaning for me. Crew is what I like to call it, a small team on a mission with a goal. But you can call them team, you can call them a squad or a pod or something else. Now, there are a couple of versions of these teams, a couple of versions of these crews. First one, the yellow ones are the most popular in the agile community where I am from. The self-organizing agile team, you could say. It would be a Scrum team, maybe a Kanban team, maybe a feature team or product team, doesn't matter. They have end-to-end responsibility over that value stream. That means that when they get a request from a customer or something, or a user, then they're able to get things done and deliver results all by themselves with cross-functional people on the entire team. They're able to get stuff done with each other without too many dependencies on everyone else in the business. This is by far the most popular kind of crew in the agile community, but there are a few exceptions. For example, sometimes we need a facilitation crew, as I call them, that go across these yellow value stream teams because they need some coordination. You could say product managers sometimes have to coordinate stuff across those value stream crews. Sometimes it's agile coaches who facilitate them managing dependencies and things like that. So that is an accepted pattern in the agile community. Sometimes you have this deviation, this small team going across the others to help them out with their dependencies and getting their work done. There's another exception, which I call the capability crew. This one has as its goal to offer unique expertise. So maybe it could be some cybersecurity experts, maybe machine learning talent, maybe some, I don't know, whatever, a crypto currency specialist, whatever. I'm just making it up on the spot. You may have 10 of those value stream crews, but only 2 machine learning experts. What do? Well, probably you don't even have enough work for them to be on every individual crew because there's not that much demand for that skill, for that capability. These experts like to hang out with each other. They, as I've noticed, they like to form their own units and offer that capability on an on-demand basis, as needed. So they sort of hover around and help the other, the yellow value stream crews with their work, getting stuff done in case their expertise, their capability is needed. And then the next exception is pretty common, the platform crew. This one offers services to the other value stream crews in the base. You could think of infrastructure or some architectural stuff, DevOps talent, maybe with an API, maybe with a service level agreement even. You could see them actually as a vendor, as a supplier within your own base. They offer a service that the others use so that the others can focus on getting their work done, and the platform team literally supports everyone and can focus on the more low level stuff. It could also be human services, by the way. I have read at Google and other companies, they offer services such as shopping or kindergarten. You drop your kid at 9 a.m. and you get them at the end of the afternoon. And you don't have to worry about them throughout the day when you can focus on your work. That's a platform service as well with an API, a human API, you could call it, a human service level agreement. Now, these 4 types I have from this book, Team Topologies. It's a great book. I can really recommend it. They are the common types of teams that we find in agile, in small agile units, in bases, as I call them. Hopefully, most of them are the yellow ones, the value stream crews, but the other 3 are like exceptions to the rule. They're accepted exceptions. There is a reason for having them. Note that I use different words because the words that they use in Team Topologies book, complicated subsystem team, I don't really like that word. I prefer to call it capabilities crew. This is about the capability they offer to the others, but we mean practically the same thing. However, from this point, things diverge. I have added a few other kinds, three other kinds of crews to make a complete picture. First of all, I'm not very interested in your product. I'm interested in my experience. Let me give you an example. I recently bought a new phone, my lovely Google Pixel 6 phone, which I had to buy because the Pixel 3 was not supported anymore. So I had to upgrade. That's how they do that, of course, the phone manufacturers. So I bought a new phone, and you know how it works. You have to re-authenticate on every app on your phone. It drives me completely nuts. So when the first time I had to make a payment with my banking app, of course I had to authenticate on the banking app. So I tried to do that, and then the app said, you need to change your password because my bank, for some reason, wants me to change my password every 3 months. And then it sent me to the website to change my password. Okay, so I went to the website, I filled in my old password, typed a new password, submit, and then the website wanted me to validate the new password with my phone, with the banking app. But this one didn't work yet because I first had to change my password. But in order to change my password, I first had to authenticate on the phone. I was stuck. I was stuck between the phone and the website. And that was painful. I literally had to solve it by getting the SIM out of my phone, putting it back in my old phone, using that still validated banking app to change my password, put the SIM back in my phone. God, I spent a half an hour of my time just making one payment. And I hated that. That was a bad experience. Now, this is typical for companies where agile teams focus on their product area. And I totally agree with the idea that we have to get rid of functional silos and replace them with horizontal self-organizing teams. But in some cases, what we end up with is horizontal silos. We have these yellow self-organizing teams focusing on their area, like maybe on the website, and another focuses on the app, and both are fine, but whoa, the customer who is stuck between the two. Tough luck. That's where I found myself. So Clayton Christensen, innovation expert, noticed this problem among others, and he said new products succeed not because of the features and functionality they offer, but because of the experiences they enable. And Kathy Shera, a famous game designer, said something similar. The secret to building great products is not creating awesome features, it is creating awesome users. And I did not feel awesome when I wasted half an hour of my time trying to make one single payment with my banking app. This was also found in this book, Network, Scaled, and Agile, where they wrote, there are examples abound of the crippling effects of agile business units that cannot work together to deliver a complete customer experience at the enterprise level. They sub-optimize for their own product areas. And for that reason, the book suggests that you may want to have some people looking at the entire experience. I call it the experience crew. They need to watch the entire journey from start to finish and figure out where are the gaps. We have these teams focusing on their product areas. So far, so good. But some customers may find that they drop in the middle, that there's problems going from one place to the other. And we need to optimize everything, not just individual islands of agility. And that's why I suggest the experience crew is sort of a special case of the facilitation crew, you could say. They focus on the customer journey. Well, guess what? If you have that on the customer side, you may also want to have the same on the supplier side, because the experience economy coincides with the gig economy nowadays. Many companies make use of freelancers, gig workers, contractors, you name it. And I have noticed myself as a contractor freelancer that sometimes the experience that I have with businesses, my God, it is excruciating. I am in such a process right now with a big consultancy company that makes me jump through, I don't know, 12 different hoops just to be onboarded on their supplier system. I am ready to fire them by now and say, all right, go somewhere else because I'm sick and tired of all the bureaucracy that you are confronting me with. That is typical on the supplier, on the vendor side. And you cannot work well without great partnerships, great gig workers and freelancers and so on. So they deserve a good experience as well. Couple more patterns. The forum is a well-known practice. The guild, the community of practice, the center of excellence, it's more or less the same, in my opinion. It is people getting together across all the teams every now and then to talk, share experience, maybe even vote on something that will have an effect on everyone over across all the teams. Like, what kind of testing framework can we standardize on with each other? Because right now we have 7 in 5 different teams, and this is chaos. We need to reduce the number of testing frameworks. Discussions like that you could have on a guild or a forum. So that's a place to talk and decide with each other and goes behind all the other teams. And then last but not least, the management. Where does the management go? Up there in the governance crew. The governance crew is basically the management team. And I find it very important that they are only there and nowhere else. They should not be sitting on any of the other teams. So no managers on Scrum teams, no managers on facilitation crews, because as soon as you have managers on other teams, they are probably going to see that as their territories. And when people have territories, good luck trying to change your organization. You want that base to be as flexible as you can. People should easily do reteaming, form new teams, depending on the outside environment. Whatever the environment needs, that is what you should be able to respond to as a micro enterprise, as a base. And that means forming new teams rapidly. I'll talk about that again in a moment. So this is the unFIX model. These are a number of basic patterns that I found across different sources. None of them are my own. I all borrowed them from somewhere else, and they make a lot of sense to me. And this is how agile works at small scale. These are self-organizing teams. People can decide for themselves to some extent how to organize, but the management team, the governance crew, sets constraints on self-organization. They can have a couple of rules for how people can reform in different teams, how they can join other teams, etc. They might offer some suggestions or even instructions on how self-organization is supposed to happen. But as I said before, reteaming may sometimes be necessary. Sometimes teams have to be formed fast. I read an article once on the news industry where when something happens in, I don't know, Sofia, Bulgaria, in the middle of the city, a big thing happens and it needs to be on the news at 8 o'clock. They send a news crew of an interviewer, a sound engineer, a camera person, and they have to go there fast. They do not have time for trust exercises. Believe me, they do not have time to draw a team canvas and decide on their team philosophy together. No, they have to go and hit the ground running and make sure the news item is ready by 8 o'clock for the news broadcast. The same applies to fire departments. The same applies to hospitals and airline crews. They maybe have a minute or something to get to know each other, and then off we go. That's because they are already trained beyond the team to work with each other in whatever combination they will have to get their job done. So actually, the forming, storming, norming, and performing happens not at the team level, but at the base level, at the larger group of 15 or 50 people. That is where people find psychological safety, belonging, where they learn how to work with each other in any kind of combination. As soon as something happens in the environment, they can form a team, a task force, a squad, and go. And no need to do a team canvas session of an hour or whatever. So this book, Dynamic Reteaming, describes all of this. It is by Heidi Helfand, and she gives a couple of benefits of reteaming in a self-organized fashion. One is, as I said, responding to environmental change. We have one crisis after the other nowadays. A war in Eastern Europe, there's an energy crisis, there are supply chain problems, lack of employees everywhere, etc. We need to respond to that as companies fast, and that may require us to form new teams at a faster pace. But also, a greater employee experience can be achieved by allowing people to form teams in a dynamic fashion, so that they decide for themselves what they want to work on and with whom for the next couple of weeks, months, or years. And it makes total sense, in my opinion. This guy, Martin Fowler, he is one of the Agile Manifesto signatories, and he said, if it hurts, do it more often. I love that quote. And he referred to software releases. Now, I am so old, you can see the gray hairs here. I'm so old that I remember software releases in the 90s. And my God, that was a pain. We had to release software like maybe once per year on discs, diskettes, and then CDs. And it was very, very painful. And you didn't want to do that too often. And then these agile people came and said, why don't you do it every month? What? Yeah, if you do it every month, you will learn how to make it less painful. And then when we could do it every month, they said, why don't you do it every week? And nowadays, many companies are able to release software many times per day. We solved all the pains of software releases. It hurt in the past, and it is painless now for many companies. Not all of them. There are plenty of companies out there where software releases still hurt, and they have work to do. Now, if this applies to software releases, why not to forming new teams? For 15 years, I have heard people say, don't change your teams, because if you change your team formation, you will hurt your velocity and you will hurt your throughput. And I've always said, yeah, that sounds fair, sounds like it makes sense. And now I think, if it hurts, we should do it more often. We should learn how to make it not hurt, as they've already learned how to do this at hospitals and fire departments and news crews. They know how to do this. Why can we not look at them and be inspired and translate some of the learnings to our industries? So a couple of examples. I have done a case study with Pipedrive, which is a SaaS company in Tallinn, Estonia. They have a CRM platform, and they have introduced dynamic reteaming in their company a good number of years ago. Actually, they reached out to me half a year ago when I published the unFIX model, and they said, hey, that looks suspiciously like what we have already been doing for several years. Can we talk? And it was a super interesting case study that I did. So what they have is interesting. They have what they call tribes, which is their name for bases or micro enterprises. The term doesn't matter. They have 17 of these tribes of about 20, 25 people, where people feel a sense of belonging. The engineers feel they belong to a tribe. That's where they have their little family, you could say. And every tribe has an engineering manager, which is the governance crew. And then they have two kinds of teams, which is interesting. They have temporary mission teams who exist for a couple of weeks to a couple of months to create new feature sets or to run tests with new MVPs, minimal viable products, to expand the product, basically. And these are always on short-term engagements. As I say, with crews, you try to get from A to B. At some point, you're done as a team. Your work is over. And so they call that mission teams. They also have a launch pad, which is where they do maintenance and small improvements within the tribe. And together, the launch pad and the mission teams are responsible for the product area to keep it running. And what is cool is that there's a continuous rotation between the launch pad and the mission teams. It is fully self-organized. The manager of the tribe is not involved. It leaves it to the engineers themselves. So when someone has been on the launch pad for quite a while, maintenance, then this person is the first one to be allowed to go on the next mission, but they can choose which mission they want to join, a new feature set that needs to be developed, for example. And who has been on missions for too long is expected to go back to the launch pad. So there's a continuous rotation of people, missions to launch pad to missions. And they call it launch pad because this is where the new missions are launched, but also the launch pad decides whether the mission is allowed to land, which is interesting. There's a launch pad lead, which is a democratically elected role on the launch pad, and the launch pad lead decides if a mission team is done and whether they are allowed to land back on the launch pad and basically merge their code with the rest of the platform, and then their work is over. So I find that very interesting. This is how they have implemented dynamic reteaming by allowing people to focus on their missions for a couple of weeks or months, maybe do 2 or 3 missions in a row, and then for a couple of weeks or months they do maintenance. It's more relaxed, it's a different kind of work, more event driven, and then they take care of their base while the others are on launchpad, or sorry, are on mission teams. And as I said, they have about 17 different tribes divided over various problem spaces. Another example that I briefly want to offer you, I also wrote a case study on that, is a company called Coolblue. They are the second largest web shop in my country, in the Netherlands. They started in 1999, and now they have 7,000 employees. That is rather big. 2.3 billion euros of revenue. Very successful company. And they have a very similar structure. I reached out to them because I noticed as a customer that they are very agile in their approach. So I thought, I'm pretty sure that once I look at how they are organized, I'm going to recognize some patterns. And for sure, I did. They have domains, what they call them, 30 different domains of roughly 20, 30 people, more like 20 in the engineering part. So I only looked at the engineering part of the company. And within that, each domain, which is organized around a product area, for example, browsing the website to find products. Another domain is making an order and paying for it. Yet another domain is deliveries and being informed about when your delivery arrives. Yet another domain is the mobile app, and so on and so on. So within each domain, which is customer oriented, part of a larger customer experience, they have several Scrum teams. They work with Scrum. They have indeed product owners as a facilitation crew. They have a domain boss, which is governance, and they have a big fat pink experience crew, which consists of business analysts, business owners, customer journey experts, quite a few people focusing on the journey, on the experience of customers. And this is a company with a net promoter score of 67, which is very, very high. And I believe that is because they have a laser focus on the experience of customers. They understand that just having yellow teams, self-organizing teams, is not enough. You really need that pink one, the experience crew, to monitor the entire journey of customers. So that's another case study. If you type cool blue case study, I'm pretty sure you will be able to find it. And if not, just reach out to me. So these are examples of the unFIX model, and you could draw many different pictures with the individual components. But let me share in the last 5 to 10 minutes of how this could scale up. This is a picture of a friend of mine, Anders Ivarsson, who is famous for the so-called Spotify model, which was actually just a case study that they published more than 10 years ago about how Spotify worked at that time. And he said, when he looked at the unFIX model, that this basically solves the problems that they discovered at Spotify later on. So I'm very happy with his recommendation. So we nailed it. We now know which patterns apply to the base, to the micro enterprise. Now, how can we scale it to something big? Well, let's have a look at higher again, that network of 4,000 micro enterprises in China. What they have at the micro enterprise level, those same patterns exist in the network, because it is impossible to make a vacuum cleaner with only 15 people. I'm pretty sure you can imagine that you need more than 15 people to make a fridge or an air conditioning. So they need multiple micro enterprises to make a larger product. They even make game computers and things like that. So in the network, they find units that are able to collaborate with each other, and then these form a cluster, a value stream cluster, the yellow ones that are able to make a product from start to end. But that's not the only kind of collaboration. The purple ones are micro enterprises that specialize in helping the others find each other and sign contracts with each other, because that's what they do in the network. They sign contracts among each other among those 4,000 units. So that's a facilitation cluster. That's a number of micro enterprises who specialize in helping the yellow clusters to get their work done. They also have micro enterprises who know all about customer journeys. You could see them as the experience cluster, the pink one. They look at what customers are doing, how they are behaving, what the trends are in the market, and they give all those signals back to the network. They also have platform cluster. There are micro enterprises simply offering the infrastructure that the entire network uses, like smart contracting, Internet of Things, all of that kind of stuff. So the entire network runs on a platform that the number of micro enterprises in that platform cluster take care of. And then they have open innovation with universities and even competitors and external freelancers and venture capitalists. You could see that as the partnerships with the yellow ones on that side, the yellow ones. And finally, of course, the blue one at the top, Mr. Zhang. I met him 10 years ago, a very inspirational person. He sets the constraints on how self-organization of the network is supposed to work. So you can see that the same patterns apply not only within the micro enterprise, within the base, but also beyond. However, agility is different. Within micro enterprises, you can rely on individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Everyone knows each other. You don't need formality. You don't need rigid rules or whatever. But in a network of 4,000 units with 80,000 people, you're going to need contracts. You're going to need formal rules on how do we work with each other, because there's no psychological safety in a crowd of 80,000 people. You need protection from law, from your own laws of the network. So the Agile Manifesto, as it was written 20 years ago, indeed, it only applies at a small scale. We need agility, business agility at a larger scale, and that works differently. But interestingly enough, with similar patterns. So to wrap it up, I compare this with Lego. I'm a big fan of Lego myself. I love Lego when I was young. I still do. I rarely play with Lego, sadly, nowadays. But with Lego box, you have all these options, these colorful bricks, and you start with an empty table, and then you can build whatever you want. And not really everything, because the blocks come with some constraints. They only fit together in certain ways. And I think that's a good metaphor for what I'm trying to achieve with the unFIX model. It's lots of options. It's up to you. You build what you want. You start with nothing, and then you can make bases and form teams together. And I suggest you use more yellow blocks than purple blocks. And they only fit together in certain ways, but it's not a framework. You do not start with a rigid framework that tells you this is the way we do our program increments, and this is the way we have our sprints and everything. No, that's your choice. So start small, start with one pattern, and then see how you can evolve from there. One of my favorite quotes is from this book, The Systems Bible by John Gall. He said, "A complex system that works is always found to have evolved from a simple system that worked." You cannot create a complex system from scratch. You have to start all over with a small, simple system and then grow it from there. And that's a message that I try to take to heart. So this is the unFIX model. I hope you find something of use in this. I don't think Agile is dead. I think it only, as originally defined, applies at small scale. We need something similar at large scale, similar values and principles, but the practices can be different. Yeah, we will need contracting and stuff like that in a larger company. It's just the way it is. And if you find this interesting, I invite you to go to unFIX.org, which is where I have the website with a community, people drawing pictures, a Miro board where you can play with the Lego blocks yourself and show everyone what you've created. So thank you so much for listening. And I go back to Sylvia. Maybe there are a couple of questions to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jurgen. It was exciting to hear
Thank you.
your work in organizational design. In the chat box, there are no questions. I propose that people unmute themselves and ask directly their questions, or they can still put them in the chat. We'll wait a bit. I have a few questions in reserve, so okay, let me ask one of my questions. What are the main barriers to look for when implementing the unFIX model? What do we have to have in mind before we start considering it and to we overcome?
It depends. Some blocks are easier than others, I suppose. It is pretty easy to have a forum, a guild, or community of practice. Very few people are against that. That is rather simple to introduce, and it doesn't conflict usually with something else. Like you could begin with an unFIX guild and then start talking about organization design. It is much different when you want to move management territories, for example. Ooh, that can be painful. If you have a development team and one of the team members is a team lead who decides on compensation of the other team members, yeah, that can be a bit of a problem, because then you have a small territory. And I suggest over time to get rid of that and maybe move that person to the management team and get management out of such a development team. But that's not something that you do like this tomorrow. I totally understand that. So it depends which building blocks. I suggest start with the simple ones, the low-hanging fruit, as they say in the English language, and grow from there.
I have another question. Do people have to have certain personality traits to be able to thrive in the unFIX organizational design model? Personality traits, not, we don't talk about capabilities like, well, I know this Python language or so, but personality traits.
That's an interesting one. I don't believe that personality traits are a barrier or a benefit uh, um, when it comes to organization design. I do believe attitude and habits and culture can be inhibitors. Like resistance to change is obviously in some companies larger than others. Some companies are more conservative than others. It is more difficult to introduce new ideas in some organizations than others. That is more of a collective resistance, you could say. The immune system of the company can resist new ideas. Well, that's no different with unFIX than with any other change suggestion out there. So it is more about attitude that you're gonna need. People are willing to try things in a way that is, as I always say, simple, safe and fast, cheap, safe and fast, I mean. And if people are not willing to try things, run experiments, cheap, safe and fast, then your organization is not going to evolve. Uh, does not only apply to unFIX, it applies to every change effort and transformation out there, I'm pretty sure. Or because I covered only organization design, and I could totally understand that this is only one part of many things that companies need to embrace, whether it is digitalization or hybrid working or whatever. There are many things that companies need to embrace, but part of that story is be more flexible, as I said, be more versatile in how you organize yourself so that it is easier to reorganize depending on what happens in the environment. And that is why I focus on organization design, because it is one of the first things you'll have to address, because you cannot reorganize with remote working and hybrid working if you don't know how to touch upon your organization design. Uh, these things are related with each other.
Thank you. I invite our attendees to ask their questions too. Now you have the expert. Please ask and learn from him. This is the opportunity.
No further questions for the moment.
I was wondering, Jurgen, after an organization implements the unFIX model, where first do you see the positive impact? Is it on the team level? They are more satisfied with their work? Is it directly linked to the user experience? Where is the first impact you could recognize?
Well, I say that experience, both customer experience and employee experience, are important. That's the X in unFIX is about experience for everyone. I just read an article again this afternoon about someone who involved the a whole business unit of 100 employees in the organization redesign that they did with each other during a whole afternoon. Everyone collaborated in forming new teams around product areas, and everyone was so super excited that they did that themselves instead of having a manager, a functional manager, or a project manager put people on teams and say, you work there, which is very dehumanizing. It is it makes people sit back with their arms crossed and expect things to be done for them because they are being moved around like cogs in a machine. But if you invite them to create the organization design with each other and say, look, we have this base of 100 people. It is supposed to be flexible. You do that with each other. What kind of teams do we need? Who wants to work on which team? And it takes maybe half an afternoon or a whole afternoon that people come out very excited. It is their own structure that they made with each other. And that's where you begin with a great employee experience. And you can't beat that with anyone doing organization design from an ivory tower. You have to involve the people and give them the purpose behind it. Like, okay, how can we stay flexible with our structure? Because maybe we're going to have to do this again half a year from now when the environment has changed or when we'll have a new product or et cetera, et cetera. So get people used to the idea that this is a reorganization on an ongoing basis. That's why I am such a fan of reteaming, because that teaches people that you're not on the same team forever. It is a temporary mission. You get something done. After that, you might be on a new crew. That will be exciting.
Indeed. There is a question from Maria Kalcheva-Hinkova. Thank you. What arguments would you use to convince a traditionally waterfall organization and its leadership to move to agile?
Well, I don't think agile is a purpose in itself. It is a means to an end. So, what is it that the company needs? Do they have to respond faster to organizational demands? Are they being outpaced by competitors? Do they lack innovations? Are startups catching up? There are different things happening in the markets. There are different reasons for companies to be more agile. Like, I mean, the famous example is Nokia losing from Apple. Nokia was not agile enough compared to Apple when Apple came up with the iPhone. It took Nokia ages to respond. They said that their Symbian platform it took weeks to simply release a new version of their platform. That is incredibly slow. So in their case, it would be responding to change would be the big reason to go agile. But for another company, it might be something different. So I don't tell anyone to be more agile. I tell people that they need to survive and thrive in an environment that changes a lot. And part of being able to survive and thrive is you'll have to be agile on the inside and embrace change and be experimental and be flexible with your structure, etc. But agile itself is not a goal. So figure out what is it that management is most scared of, because fear is a very good motivator also for managers. And I'm pretty sure top managers sometimes fear the competition, for example, or they fear being outmaneuvered by startups who eat their lunch and become scale-ups, as Spotify has done in the music industry, for example. And Tesla has done in the car industry. So what is it that the executives fear? That is your starting point for introducing agile. So, well, to address that fear, we're going to have to be more agile.
Thank you. There's another question from Ivalo Christoph. Did you have an experience when unfixed model simply doesn't work and you have to completely change the team's goals and start over again? If this has happened, how long it takes to declare it is time to change?
Well, no. First of all, the model, as I showed you, is only 5 months old. So that is far too early to have any experience with companies learning about it, trying it out, reporting positive or negative experiences. I don't expect that even this year, probably next year. That's so young. It is this model. However, the patterns in the model, I borrowed them from other sources. Like 4 of the patterns are from the team topologies book, but that book is already a few years old. So there are companies who have experience with team topologies patterns, etc., etc. And as I said, it is not a framework. You don't implement unFIX as a framework. That is not how you go about it. There are individual pieces, and even if you use only one piece, only the yellow one for that is the Scrum team or the Agile team, you got started. So if you have a negative experience with one of the pieces, try another piece. Maybe you begin with the wrong Lego block. That's possible. So no, I don't have implementation stories to share because it's too early for that. And also, I don't believe in implementing unFIX. It is inspiration for change. You can use one Lego block, you can use lots of them, but you decide what you need from the library of patterns that are available.
Thank
All
you.
right, that was it.
Yeah, there was a thank you note from Ivalo, who posted
All
a
right.
question.
Okay. I see the time is just about up, so maybe if someone has a last question,
Yeah,
then we can start wrapping up.
Jürgen, maybe you can give us something like a hint to what are the main advantages. Maybe this can be also your summing up for the presentation of the unfixed model in comparison to other models. What are the top three, if there are three or maybe five features that makes it unique?
Well, it's a pattern library. It's not a framework. That is the number one difference. So if you look at scaled agile framework or large scale Scrum, less, or Spotify model, which is sometimes used as a framework example. This is different. This is individual building blocks. And you basically create your own framework, you could say, with the individual patterns. So that is the biggest difference, and in my opinion, the selling point. I can make 1,000 different visuals with the unfixed building blocks instead of just one framework. And also you start with nothing. You start from scratch, and then you build things up. So it is bottom up, actually, the bottom up evolution instead of with other frameworks that are usually top down, like scaled agile framework is usually bought by managers who then introduce it and roll it out in the organization, and employees never discussed or agreed to anything. They're just confronted with the fact that we are now going to do safe. Nobody wants to, some organizations, but they have to. that is not a good way of introducing agile, in my opinion. So these are the two main points. And the third one would be to focus on experience instead of features and products, because I think that's a big change that we need to make. Because in the agile community, we made a change from projects to products, which is good, but the next step is from product to experience. Because I'm not interested in products, I'm interested in what is my experience as a customer, as a user, and products are just a means to an end. And to make me happy as a consumer or as a business user. So those are the three I could mention off the top of my head.
Yeah, thank you. There is another question. Is there a minimum building blocks that should be used for a successful model? From Maria Kaucheva-Hinkova again.
No, I call everything optional. Of course, some are very much recommended. I definitely recommend the yellow ones, because if you do not have value stream crews or agile teams, good luck. I don't think you're going to survive for long as a company. So that is definitely one to consider. And as I said, the base, the small group of people that you feel you belong to. Nobody feels they can belong to 4,000 people or 80,000 people. That's too much. Our human brain is not capable of feeling safety in such a large group. We need smaller groups, bigger than one team, where the different teams can reorganize themselves in such a unit. That is also a good one to have, I think. But again, all is optional. It's up to you to figure out where you want to start. All right, that's it.
Yes. So are there some more questions? And if not, maybe Jurgen, you can give your concluding remarks, and we can close the session. Let's wait.
Yeah, well, I hope people are going to join the community unFIX.org, as I shared with you. So feel free to ask me more questions there if you still have questions remaining. It's dinner time over here where I am, so I'm going to tune out. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for the invite. I enjoyed this. You're going to share the slides. I already sent them to you just before the meeting. Yeah, I hope to see some people in real life, and I will be back in Sofia, Bulgaria, I'm sure, in the foreseeable future. So I enjoyed my time there. So thank you so much for
Yes.
being here.
Yes, for sure. And once you come here, if it's not on our invitation, please let us know. We can organize an event with you anyway. Thank you so much for your time, for your inspiration, for your wisdom, for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. And I believe our attendees have profited from this 1 hour with you, and will think how to implement, how to change, how to make their teams more like high performing teams. I believe your model is going towards this direction. Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording as of now, and yes, I can close the meeting. Thank you. Have a good dinner in Rotterdam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.